La Rochelle and Ronan O'Gara pitching up in Dublin once again. Maybe seen of O'Gara's greatest hour as La Rochelle coach, that comeback against Leinster a couple of years ago. Eddie, in 2027, and this is a sign we're all getting old, but in 2027, which is the year of musical chairs in terms of contracts, Leo Cullen, Jacques Nienaber, Andy Farrell, Stuart Lancaster, Rog himself, all these contracts are up for obvious reasons in a World Cup year. In 2027, Ronan O'Gara will be 50 years old. Where is he in his career with the view to Ireland job, with the view to does David Humphreys need to get this guy home and into a province somewhere, maybe Leinster, maybe Munster, who knows. Obviously, Andy Farrell will probably have first refusal on whether or not he wants to stay on in 27, albeit trying to predict anything is fool's errand. A month is a long time in rugby. But Rog at 50, with the view to where he is in terms of Irish rugby, because it just feels sort of wrong that O'Gara won't be in the country in some shape or form for his entire coaching career, but obviously time is ticking.
Well, it depends on what the view of the IRFU is on this. Like Rog has done his time at the top end of the game, just outside your international rugby. I mean, he's been a huge success in La Rochelle. He's experienced in the Southern Hemisphere. He knows French rugby, which is a tough business to survive in. So he's proven his ability at the top end of the game. The question for the RFU is, do they want him to do a kind of apprenticeship in Ireland before he gets the Irish job? That really is. That's as simple as that. Now, if they do want to do that, they need to get him into his apprenticeship. There's no question about Rog would love to coach Ireland. That is probably at this point, given his amount of time in the club game, might be his raison d'etre is to get into the international game. He hasn't been shy of putting his name out there around other international jobs. But obviously, I would say there's no question or doubt that the Ireland would be the prize for him. And so the question is, like, I think it has to happen eventually, unless he gives up coaching, if he stays on the same pathway. So the RFU want to make him do an apprenticeship here. And then if they're going to do that, based on the way you led into the question, they would have to move reasonably quickly on that to get him in at the game here. Now, on the other hand, if David Humphreys goes, you know what, we know his form, we know what he's capable of, he doesn't have to prove anything to us, we could bring him in cold into the Irish job. He's an Irishman, he knows the scene, he probably knows most of the players. So that to me is the question as to whether he comes back and does an apprenticeship or not, is what do the RFU want? There's no question or doubt in my mind that Rog would jump at coming back to Ireland, getting under the table, his feet under the table in some way, shape or form, but he wouldn't worry, I might say, to come back straight into the job cold. I don't be my take on it. So it really is down to David Humphreys thinking on this. That's where I would put it. And if Humps wants him to do an apprenticeship, he has to move sooner rather than later. If he doesn't, it doesn't really matter. He can hold off on it for a while.
I don't think there's any great need for him to do an apprenticeship, do you?
No, I don't actually. That's my point, is that he's proven his case. I mean, fellas have come into coach Ireland with less I suppose, less experience at the level he's at, and probably less success at the level he's at as well. So, you know, he doesn't have anything to prove about his ability at that level of the game. And, I mean, international rugby is different, and there's a different set of skills around it in many ways. But having said that, no one's doubting his ability. So if you think he's good enough, I don't think he needs an apprenticeship, to be fair. And maybe the apprenticeship in Ireland might be the best for him, because where does he land? You know, where do you put him?
Because I don't think he necessarily wants to go in at Munster. Now, I'm not speaking for him, but certainly a couple of years ago, I'm not sure he was looking at Munster and looking at the financial backing and look at the situation there and thinking that is a good place for me to further my career. So
well, it's a complicated place, Joe, to go, not because it's Munster, but because he's a Munster man. Like, if he were to land in Munster, like, it gets, like, the difference with him landing in Munster and some stranger of a coach, like the current coach, is that there's no expectations around the new coach if he's not from there. But if Rogers landed in Munster, there's a whole plethora around it about what he's going to do, what he's going to achieve. It'd be a massive expectation around it, which is probably, when we put it, way ahead of where Munster actually are. So he'd be suddenly under the goal immediately. And then if it was an instant success, that could affect his apprenticeship for the big job. So I couldn't imagine him being reticent about Munster. Not that he doesn't love Munster, he's not a Munster man, and he loves to see Munster succeeding, but it would be a difficult gig for him. And then do he go into Leinster as a Munster? I mean, he's always going to carry the Munster tag where he goes. So where does he land in Ireland to give him that apprenticeship if the IRFU want it? And I don't think he needs it, and I don't think it's an easy landing spot either, really.
How do you see it, Cian?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty clear that I think if Ronan O'Gara wanted the Munster job over the last few years, I think there was ample opportunity. You look at the amount of coaching changeover that's happened. I think Munster would have been mad if they didn't pick up the phone and ring Ronan O'Gara, but I think he equally would have been mad if he had taken the job, because I think there's an element of heart ruling head sometimes when it comes to decisions like this. But everything you hear from him, his family are very settled, a bit like Andy Farrell in Dublin. His family love life in La Rochelle, a beautiful part of the world to live. The job he's done has been outstanding. I know more recently it's been tougher, it's a bit more of a rebuild, but the success that he brought to what is a pretty much a small town. I think last week they were celebrating, there was a 10 years selling out their home venue. Like, Ronan O'Gara has been a big part of that. So I think when he looks at the Munster structures, maybe the talent pool that was there, I think he probably would have understood the scale of the job that he would have had on his hands if he had come back. Now, I agree with both of you. I don't think that there would necessarily be a need for him to do an apprenticeship, if that's what you want to call it. But if I put my IRFU hat on, I think that they would much rather he did an apprenticeship in Ireland. If you look back over the last few years, the way that succession planning is going, the way Simon Easterby stepped up when Andy Farrell was away, the way Paul O'Connell stepped up when they were both away on the Lions tour. So I'd say they would much prefer if O'Gara had a job in Munster, Leinster, if that's where it would be. I think O'Gara would probably have to, he might admit this himself as well, rein himself in a little bit, I think, if he was going to be the Ireland head coach, because his disciplinary record in France has been very checkered, to say the least. Even recently he was in hot water again. I think that's something the IRFU would probably look at as well, that they would expect certain standards from their coach, where it's a bit more mad in France, isn't it? We see stuff like that more regularly. So there are things I think the IRFU would have to consider. But I think Eddie's right. He went down to Crusaders, did a lot of good work down there with Scott Robertson, who he's very close with, the All Blacks head coach. Went to Racing, obviously. And it's the culture he's created within La Rochelle, because Eddie's right. Look at the struggles that Stuart Lancaster had when he went to Racing over the last couple of years. To go in as a foreign coach in France, it's very, very difficult to be a success. And he's done it brilliantly. He's managed a lot of big egos in that La Rochelle dressing room, but he's also managed a lot of different nationalities. I mean, it's not there's a lot of French players in it, don't get me wrong, but he's got Pacific Islanders, he's got Will Skelton, he's got Ultan Dillane, an Irish player, Jack Noel, and he's meshed them all together absolutely brilliantly. So I still think his stock is extremely high, albeit La Rochelle are definitely in a bit of a rebuilding process at the moment.
So this conversation gets onto shaky ground, obviously, in that, trying to predict the future is perilous. But say 2027, if that goes very well and Andy Farrell kind of navigates this rebuilding phase and it's a good World Cup, the draw is very favourable, maybe it's an epic semi-final defeat or maybe even a World Cup final, and Farrell says, I want 4 more years, then I think Andy Farrell gets 4 more years. I think that's his... he has,
or if he wins it, you stop short.
Or if he wins the World Cup. Yeah, that won't come back to bite us. But Farrell gets first refusal. But things always don't work out. So say Farrell moves on, he gets a different offer, he wants to try something new, or say the thing implodes and there is a vacancy in 2027. So the Easterby thing, Eddie, I mean, it's hard to know how attached the IRFU are to this idea of, well, Farrell came from under Schmidt, so the Easterby from under Farrell, we really like that. Mm-hmm. So the extent to which Easterby is a factor is a question mark. And then on Rog, so... Cian used an interesting line there, but that he'd have to rein himself in. Do you think there's any kind of with the IRFU, just with Farrell, with Schmidt? There's been these guys are kind of just perfection. They're whiter than white in every kind of way. Rog can give and we love it as media. He can give very emotional interviews. He can have, the referee kind of stuff. He's a big presence in the media. Even as La Rochelle coach, he's doing, radio. He'll do columns in the Examiner. He's kind of he's a unique kind of person, isn't he? He has there's a little bit of box office to him. Do you think that the IRFU would like that about him, or do you think they'd be cautious about that when it comes to Rog?
Well, I think they would be cautious. I think that's the reality. Although to Keane's point about his disciplinary record in France, I think that is a problem. Yeah, that you'd have to what he does in France, he could not possibly even consider doing if he was coach of the national team. It'd be chaotic. He don't want to do that. No, Roger's no duh. I mean, he's a smart guy. He knows well that wouldn't fly. And I think that, to me, is not something that would take him out of the Irish job. I mean, I don't think that the interview say, well, we know his form, it's never going to happen. I mean, that can be all managed, and Roger would understand that had to be a change of tack there. And the IRFU know that's almost like a conversation that'll be had, like, Roger, if you get this job, like, and plus the fact he's not going to be on the sideline, he's going to be stuck up in the stand like every other coach. So, like, I think that, to me, is a bit of a canard in terms of that might stop him getting the job. I don't think it's stopping getting the job.